welcome to episode number 11. I'm CJ Werleman. Thank you for joining us. This week I argue the new Israeli Prime Minister has unleashed Jewish settlers to carry out a new wave of violence and bloodshed against Palestinians in the occupied territories. But first, a quick reminder to hit the subscribe button below. We don't want you to miss any of our future episodes. Now let's get into it. There's a very simple reason terrorist attacks committed by Jewish settlers are surging upwards in the occupied Palestinian territories. That reason is this. Naftali Bennett is the first Israeli Prime Minister to have lived as an illegal settler in the occupied West Bank, which is a really kind way of saying he's the first leader of the country to be a bona fide war criminal. Wait, who am I kidding? This guy, and this guy, and this guy here too, were also bona fide war criminals, as was she. But the point remains Naftali Bennett is the first to emerge from the criminal settler movement. And it's also important to bear in mind that we're talking about an individual who brags about killing Palestinians for sport. What a guy. So it shouldn't surprise anyone that just 2 days after Bennett was sworn into office, hundreds of Jewish settlers marched through the streets of occupied Jerusalem chanting, "Death to Arabs, may your villages burn, and a second Nakba is coming." Every day since, the day-to-day life for the Palestinians in the occupied territories has descended unimaginably further into a macabre routine of humiliation, dispossession, and loss. Towns are ransacked, people are disappearing in mass arrest dragnets, more land is stolen, while mosques and homes are demolished and vandalized, and all the while settler mobs carry out more brazen attacks. Videos posted on social media show Jewish settlers pepper spraying Palestinian kids in the face, kicking and spitting on protesters, and carrying out home invasions in East Jerusalem, and often as Israeli police stand idly by as disinterested onlookers. I mean, who on earth shoots agony-inducing pepper spray directly into the face of a defenseless child? It's sadistic cruelty by one name, it's ethnic cleansing by another, and it's happening on live television. But the international community couldn't be less interested. So what is the ultimate goal of this violence? Well, the goal is the same as it's always been, to drive Palestinians from their homes and land in order to make way for more Jewish settlements. These attacks include raids on homes and villages, violent physical assaults, vehicular ramming attacks, mosque fire bombings, shootings, the throwing of Molotov cocktails and other projectiles, along with the vandalization of property and destruction of crops, particularly olive trees, which are the lifeblood of the Palestinian economy. Some of these olive trees are more than 1,500 years old, but Jewish settlers think nothing of cutting them down and setting them ablaze because of the hatred they hold in their hearts for the indigenous occupants of the land. Settler attacks against Palestinian farmers occur all year round, but increase in frequency and intensity during the harvest season, causing a devastating financial impact to Palestinian communities. During the first 2 weeks of last year's harvest season, Israeli settlers committed 145 attacks, resulting in the destruction of 3,700 olive trees and injuries to 63 Palestinians, including 13 children, according to the United Nations. All of that in just 2 weeks. The UN also highlighted a total of 210 attacks by settlers against Palestinians in the first 4 months of this current year, while also accusing Israeli forces of turning a blind eye or even participating in the violence. The UN said, and I quote, "Settler violence is ideologically motivated and primarily designed to take over land, but also to intimidate and terrorize Palestinians with the intent to make their daily lives untenable." End quote. It also said young children, the elderly, and even pregnant women were not off limits, and that these attacks take place within a system of impunity. These attacks not only meet the definition of terrorism, but also war criminality, because the illegal seizure and occupation of the Palestinian territories is in itself regarded a war crime under the terms of the Geneva Convention. Which means the media should stop calling them Israeli settlers and start labeling them what they really are, terrorists and war criminals, especially given they love nothing more than to terrorize, kidnap, and murder Palestinian kids. During last month's so-called flag rally, Israeli settlers not only chanted "Death to Arabs," but also, and I quote, "put Muhammad on the grill," a reference to 16-year-old Muhammad Abdul Qadir, who was kidnapped by settlers in 2014, and then beaten, forced to drink gasoline before being burned alive. Now imagine for a moment that you're a Palestinian living in the occupied territories. Now imagine how you would feel if you were surrounded by 800,000 of these lunatics, who not only want you and your children dead, but are able to inflict egregious violence against you while they are shielded and even egged on by Israeli soldiers, many of whom are settlers too. Well, I'll tell you how you'd feel. You'd be living in a perpetual state of terror and fear from these radicalized Jewish settlers, many of whom are migrants from the United States and Europe. I mean, here's me talking to an Israeli soldier in the occupied West Bank a few years ago. He had moved to the territory from his home country of France a little more than a year before that. But here he is living on stolen land, armed with a semi-automatic assault rifle and a mandate to rule over the indigenous Palestinian population. So what we have here is a French Jew enjoying property, citizenship and gun rights on stolen Palestinian land. At the same time, nearly 6 million Palestinian refugees languish in squalid refugee camps throughout the Middle East after being violently expelled by Israel in 1967. Worse, these Jewish settlers and the terror and violence they impose on the Palestinians is funded by, well, you guessed it, the United States of America. You see, it's a little known fact that the US government gives tax breaks to companies that funnel cash to Israeli settlements in the occupied Palestinian territories, despite official US government policies standing in opposition to the construction of Israeli settlements, having deemed them a gross violation of international law. In other words, the US government calls the settlements illegal on the one hand, but creates tax incentives for Americans to fund the settlements on the other, and the system of apartheid and terror that flowed directly from them. So imagine how utterly traumatized Palestinians are when they find Jewish settlers with heavy American accents showing up on their doorstep with US money and US weapons to remove them from their homes and expel them from their homeland. Now, lest we forget that the worst ever Jewish terrorist attack to occur in the West Bank was carried out by an American citizen who shot 29 Palestinian worshippers dead at the Mosque of Abraham during the holy month of Ramadan in 1994. A survivor of that attack described how Israeli authorities add to his trauma by denying him access to the mosque, saying, and I quote, "Every time it is Ramadan, I remember that morning. Every time I see somebody injured, I remember that morning. It is unforgettable. I feel frustrated and depressed. I still see the dead bodies and the injured, and I remember what happened to me. It's worse because the Israeli soldiers do not always allow me into the mosque. They know me and that I survived the massacre, but have denied me entry on many occasions." End quote. Palestinians remember this massacre every Ramadan, and with the realization that more than 15% of the settler population are US citizens, which begs the question that if the US government opposes the occupation, as it claims to do, then why has it not punished or reprimanded those who participate in this war crime? Clearly, the US government doesn't mean what it says when it comes to Israel's human rights violations and violation of international law. Instead, it's an active and willing party to these crimes, and thus making a mockery of its claim to being an honest and trustworthy broker for peace and justice. Therefore, there's no other way to view illegal Israeli settlements other than as an extension of US imperialism. So why then should we be surprised when Israeli settlers carry out terror attacks against Palestinians with a total sense of impunity? The answer to that question is obvious. Well, that's all we have time for this week. Thank you for tuning in. Please like and subscribe to this channel, and please help spread the word with your family and friends on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And please consider supporting this endeavor by becoming a member of this show at patreon.com/CJ Werleman. But for now, good night, good morning, or good day, wherever you are, and stay blessed.